If you're looking for some good reading suggestions, I have some for you in this episode. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. Pastor Tim Westermeyer here, Senior Pastor of St. Philip the Deacon in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. Good to be with you, as always. I was reflecting about this week's episode and knew even before I came into church this morning that what I wanted to do was lift up just a handful of books that I'm currently reading. You know, I do a lot of reading as a pastor. I do a lot of other things as well. I think I've done episodes in the past about what I'm currently reading, as among other things, an invitation for you to share what you've been reading. And the decision to do that, I'm just reflecting on this some more, was sort of reinforced. I got to church this morning. This happens with some frequency, and someone was waiting to see me. And all they wanted to do was talk about the books they've been reading, it was a wonderful conversation. I celebrate the fact that this individual was doing a deep dive on his faith with a bunch of resources, some of which he wanted to share. So that was great. And then I sat down in my usual place here to tape this episode, and Tim and I had a nice conversation about a number of theological questions, and that brought to mind some books that are important to me, among them C.S. Lewis's Narnia Chronicles and some writing of G.K. Chesterton. Anyway, so books are a big part of my life, and maybe in no particular order other than maybe I'll talk about three books that are, two that are historical, a couple that are theological, and one that is neither of those things. Actually, it's three books that are historical now that I think about it. So one book, and I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, is Washington's Crossing. I don't know, can you see this, Tim? Is that all right? Washington's Crossing by David Hackett Fisher, winner of the Pulitzer Prize in History. And I read a lot of theology, obviously, but I also enjoy history, and I enjoy reading other kind of things too. It was just a brilliant summary of some of the dynamics going on at the time of what we Americans call the Revolutionary War, and the learnings that were made in real time by people like Washington as they were fighting that war. So highly recommend that. Another historical book, which I'm usually reading a number of books at the same time. This is one I'm currently in the midst of, is called Medieval Horizons: Why the Middle Ages Matter by Ian Mortimer. I have a number of books like this in my library, and this book and others like it sort of push back against the conventional wisdom that the Enlightenment, let's say, rediscovered wisdom that had been lost for centuries and centuries. The truth is, historically, there has been an ongoing and general increase in knowledge, including during the period we call the Dark Ages or the Medieval Ages. And that may seem like a trivial note, but it's one of the myths that we have that's connected to how we think about our own faith. So this is, I've not read anything by Mortimer before, but I'm enjoying that. Another history thing I'm working through, about maybe in the first quarter or fifth of it right now, is a big volume called Dominion, How the Christian Revolution Remade the World. This is by a British historian named Tom Holland. It is really, really good so far. I will say more about it when I finish. I'll also mention that Tom Holland hosts a podcast with another historian called The Rest is History, which I would absolutely commend to those of you who are interested in history. I've been thoroughly enjoying listening to a number of episodes, and he and his partner Dominic, I'm forgetting Dominic's last name, do a great job of bringing history to life. And again, I'd highly recommend it. A couple theological things. One is called, I think I mentioned this an episode or two ago, Light from Light, a theological reflection on the Nicene Creed. That's by Bishop Robert Barron. I've read this before, I've taught about it before, but I came back to it in part because of this 3-week mini-series we're doing here about the Trinity. I haven't necessarily used anything from it, but it's always good when you're, for me at least, I feel like when I'm preaching, to have way more in my head or a deeper understanding than simply what I'm saying. And that's been a helpful reminder on that front. Recent book I just got to my library is called Understanding the Hillbilly Thomist: The Philosophical Narratives of Flannery O'Connor's Narrative Art. I've talked before about Flannery O'Connor. She's one of my absolute favorite authors. And maybe surprisingly to people, she was, as the title of this book suggests, she understood herself as a quote-unquote hillbilly Thomist, which means she was a student of Thomas Aquinas, who lived in the 13th century, 1225 to 1274, if I remember correctly. And his work, in a very powerful way, is lived out through both her narrative fiction and also her essays and her nonfiction writings, which are really wonderful. Mystery and Manners is a book I've mentioned before by her, or The Habit of Being. Her letters are all wonderful. And again, she reflects, in only 39 years of life, she died very young, the deep learning of Thomas in a kind of very important way. And then finally, I probably shared too many already, but I've got another book here. I haven't cracked this one yet, but this is neither, well, it's historical, I guess. It's not theological. It's about my interest in watches. It's called The Hands of Time, How Humanity's Most Profound Technical Achievement Tells the Story of Time Itself. This is by a woman, I think a British woman, who's a watchmaker named Rebecca Struthers. So, a little glimpse into the library and the reading habits of this guy. As always, if you have books you're reading or shows you're watching or essays you've taken a look at that you think would be worth sharing, please comment in the section below. And until next time, be well, stay in touch, and God bless.